Hey, somebody needs to secure the evidence. You have? Excellent. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. You are listening to The Professional Noticer. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Andrews. Hey, thank you for making me a part of your week. My purpose here today and with every show we do is to play the part of a best friend or a coach. I want to help you live the life of your wildest dreams by giving you access to the greatest mentors the world has to offer today. This week, The Professional Noticer is sponsored by Books for Veterans. And listen to this exciting opportunity. The Veterans Administration in Washington, D.C. has asked for 10,000 Andy Andrews books. I'm personally donating as many as I can, but we're almost to 10,000 with your help. And what we are able to do to make that easier for you is for every $10 donation you make, a hardcover book will be sent to the Veterans Administration for veterans, their families, and for employees of the VA. That $10 will cover the cost of the book, the shipping, and handling. But here is another way that you can give one of those books. As you know, on andyandrews.com, we have a variety of t-shirts there. And so for every t-shirt you purchase on andyandrews.com, we will give a hardcover book in your name to the VA. And you can have it done in your name or a friend's name. And there's a place there for you to make that choice. So whether you can make this a personal gift or a corporate donation, just go to andyandrews.com/veterans. This can be added to a website purchase, done as an individual entry, or with a t-shirt. Thank you very much for your support. Observations and answers, that's what we do here on The Professional Noticer. And as you know, we love it when somebody comes to the table with both, and we have that situation today. We have a guy who may not be new to you, but he's kind of new to me, and I'm amazed. I'm like, where have I been? Because now that I've gotten into his work, I'm hooked. So please welcome best-selling author James Chandler. Hi, James. How are you?
Well, I'm very well. Thank you. Thanks for having me on today.
Now, I just got to say, I heard a couple of comments from people about your legal thrillers, and somebody had said something about Misjudged, and said that, man, if you like John Grisham, you will love James Chandler. And so I was like, all right, well, I like Grisham, okay, and so, but they're right. I love what you're doing. I went through Misjudged very quickly, and I'm like, I think I'm on Audible. I'm an hour and 43 minutes to the end of your second book.
Well, you're very kind, and whoever made those observations is very kind, and I'm tremendously flattered to hear that. When it comes from a writer like yourself, it's a lot especially. So thank you.
Well, you know, the book Misjudged, I want to give people a basis for this. The book Misjudged, by the way, right now, this is the number 31 book on Kindle of all books. Of all books. I mean, every genre of all books. And so this is just, I know how big a deal that is. And so you have kind of hung there, and the people are loving these books. And so, first of all, how did you begin writing? Because you took this up later in your life.
Well, I did. And the short answer is I read a really bad legal thriller about 7 or 8 years ago. And I said to my wife of 30 plus years at the time, I said, I could write a better book than that. And she says, yeah, sure you could. So I set out not knowing anything about writing books, and went to the library and studied books I liked. And I bought, online articles on how to write a book and all that. But I finally just sat down and wrote the book. And I think that's the key, it's write the book. And so I wrote the book and then spent a couple of years trying to find an agent and a publisher, and eventually I found Severn River Publishing, and nobody's more surprised than I am by the success we've seen.
Wow. Now your hero in this book. By the way, where are you today?
I
What?
am in I'm in Gillette, Wyoming.
Okay, you're in Wyoming, which is where your books are set,
Right.
and so the hero is Sam Johnstone, and he is a guy who was kind of grew up in rough circumstances, and then ended up joining the military and getting wounded badly overseas, and lost 5 men when he had his leg taken off, and so he is now he came back, went to law school on the GI Bill, and he's an attorney, but he also has some significant problems. Explain the background of how you put those in that character and why.
Well, I believe that you're right from experience, and it's fair to say that I have a lot of experience in a number of the areas that I write about. I'm no hero like Sam Johnstone is, but I did serve on active duty as an Army officer for 20 years, as an air defense artillery and officer in a number of light infantry divisions. I did go to law school later in life. I went to George Mason University. I started when I was 40 in Washington, D.C., and then came out west. So there's some parallels there.
Right.
But of course, everything's exaggerated, and everything is sort of made to provide entertainment. So that's kind of the bare bones of it.
Do you like to fish as much as Sam does?
I do. In fact, I am a fanatical fly fisherman. I've caught fish on my fly rod in 33 states at this point.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was my first foray into writing, was writing I self-published a little nonfiction book on fly fishing.
Well, I could tell, my boys and I are outdoor people, and, we read a lot. And so it's one of those kind of things that we really dislike, when you can read something and you can tell the author knows nothing about the outdoor sport they're writing with. But in the opposite way, you can spot immediately somebody knows what they're talking about. And man, when those flies began to hatch and he's matching, I'm like, this guy knows exactly. This guy's a fisherman. So is Alabama one of the states that you've caught something on a fly?
Alabama is not. Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and South Carolina I have not. And then the very Northeast, Maine, and then a little bit around the Great Lakes. So I got 3 big trips I need to make, I think.
Well, you come here, you can knock out 2 of them immediately, because I'm the only person you'll ever meet who can give you directions to my house on a national map. Because if you look at where Florida touches Alabama, right on the line, as far south as you can go, that's where our house is. And so we can cast this way and get Alabama water, and cast this way and get Florida water.
Well, there you go. That's classic.
Yeah, so we can knock out 2 of them for you with the trip down here. So, this is kind of a trick question here, but I got to ask this. In the first book, in Misjudged, I was like, man, I was aggravated at that judge, at how he was treating Sam. Have you ever known a judge that mean?
No, not personally. Yeah, I've heard about him, and I don't think a judge that mean in the 21st century would last very long. But there are some who are somewhat cantankerous, but not like that.
Now you know this pretty closely, because you actually are a judge now.
Yes, I am. I am a circuit court judge, which is the lowest level trial court in Northeast Wyoming. I'm one of 3 in kind of the Northeast 3 counties in Wyoming. Yeah.
Wow. Is that, can I ask now, James Chandler is a pen name, And so is that why you chose to go with a pen name, because of the legal profession?
It is. My real name is Paul Phillips, and I am a judge in the Sixth Judicial District. And when I finally got a publishing deal, I talked with my publisher, and he agreed with me it would be a good idea to work using a pen name, just sort of to keep my my day job separate and distinct from my hobby, really,
Right.
of writing books, and it's worked phenomenally well.
Well, I've seen, I'm a student of great authors. I guess I really like reading good stuff, and I I like reading people that I can learn from. And some of the people that I've read for a long time, they have managed to create characters that were so vivid that they've been able to take a character who is not necessarily a major character in a book and then create whole books and series from that character. And I think you have one of those in Punch.
Yeah.
I think your detective is hilarious. I mean, he's sarcastic. And I have a theory that people who can write witty, smart dialogue are witty, smart people. And so your dialogue is crisp, it's smart, and I really enjoy your stuff.
Well, thank you. You're very kind. And I wonder where you were for the 2 years I was trying to find a publisher,
Hey, I understand that. I mean, my first book, or my first novel, The Traveler's Gift, I was turned down by 51 different publishers for 3.5 years before I got a publisher on that. And so it is amazing, isn't it, to look at the success that you've had and look back and realize that for a couple of years, these people who supposedly knew more about the publishing business than you did, they looked at this book and said, they looked at Misjudged and said, this is not worth putting on paper. And yet, when it was published, it's a huge, massive hit and is the 31st most popular book in the entire world. And to give somebody, an idea of what that means, you can actually look on Amazon and see a book that is ranked 5,459,742. And so with millions of books being ranked, 31 is just, that's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal. Pretty, like I said, nobody's more surprised than I am, but I'm enjoying every minute of it. I got to tell you.
Where do you, at what time do you write? Because I have people ask a lot of times, I have a full-time job. I don't know when I'd take time to write, but I think you and I know the answer to that, because I don't think anybody quits a full-time job just to start writing. But how do you find the time? What do you do? What is your process?
My process is early morning. I've always been an early morning guy, and of course, the military facilitated that for 20 years. And so I write in my chambers. I take a laptop with me, and I write in my chambers from 6 to 7:30 most mornings. Then I turn to my day job. A lot of times, I'll just have a sandwich and eat and write at lunchtime. And then I write a lot. My wife and I will usually discuss it before the weekend comes up, but I'll usually pick a day to write on the weekend, either Saturday or Sunday. We'll pick one, and I'll write at least the morning of that. And then she owns her own business. She's a licensed professional counselor, so she doesn't take a lot of holidays off. So I write a lot on holiday days off. Because
Gotcha.
since I work for the government, I get those days off.
Yeah.
So I get a lot done on those days.
I'm a morning person too, as far as writing. I feel like if I can get up and not check email and just do my quiet time and then start writing, I do a lot better when it's quiet and in the morning. Do you write from an outline, or are you a seat of the pants person, or are you an outline?
I write from a pretty extensive outline. As when I started with Severn River, they would have me turn in outlines to down to the chapter level, make 5 to 7,000 word outlines, and
Yeah,
they don't
my publisher tried to get me to do that too.
really, and it didn't work for you.
No, I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. I mean, like, how am I supposed to turn in an outline when I don't know what's going to happen? I mean,
Yeah.
I would have the beginning, the ending. I would have the ending, and I would have the kind of the crux of it, but it like happens in front of me. I would probably drive you nuts.
Yeah,
But
you probably would. But I kind of like it because, for example, the book you're reading, One and Done, the ending that was published ending, totally different than what I had when I finished the first draft. When I finished the first draft, I didn't like it at all. And so I decided to change the ending. And because I had a long outline, then I could go back and I knew where to go to make some changes in the novel and the events leading up to the end. So I'm no longer required to submit those, but I've kept up the habit of doing the outline. I feel like I'm shifting from a known point, to use an old artillery phrase.
a 7,000 word outline.
Yeah. It's not as, but on the other hand, when I finish the outline, I'm about 10% of the way on the book, right?
Yeah, that's true. I guess I understand intellectually how that makes the process much easier. I do, but I have a couple of kind of acquaintances. They're not really great friends, but Dave Barry, who's the humor writer,
Oh my gosh.
and Ridley Pearson, who is a thriller writer. And Dave and Ridley were, they've been friends for a long time. And Ridley was, when his kids were little, Ridley read a bedtime story to his daughter about Peter Pan. And so after she read, the little girl said, "Dad, where does Peter come from?" And Ridley said, "Well, he comes from Never Never Land." And she said, "No, but I mean, where did he come from?" And Ridley was like, "Well, I don't know." And so he told Dave that story, and Dave and Ridley wrote a prequel for Peter Pan. And it was a huge deal. This was probably 15 years ago, but it was a huge deal. But the reason I tell you this story is because neither of them had ever written with anybody. And so they're fired up, they're ready to go. And so Ridley invites Dave. Dave lives in Miami, and Ridley invites Dave, and he comes to his house and he says, "I've got us ready to work in this room." And Dave goes in, and there's outlines all over the wall. I mean, it's just like maps of and Dave's like, because Dave's a lot like me and Ridley's a lot like you. And so it like gonna freak Dave out. So you're in the book I'm on right now, One and Done. You capture me with your characters, and I would urge anybody watching this or listening to this to pay attention when you get into these James Chandler books. To pay attention to how good the author is at moving your emotions with these characters. I mean, this basketball player that's on trial right now, Devontae Blair. Man, I just want to punch this kid, I mean, just so disrespectful and surly, and just want to punch him, And then sometimes you have such a great main character in Sam, because sometimes I feel sorry for him, Sometimes I just want to slap him. Sometimes, it's just you're yanking me all over the map, which is, I think that's just great writing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, it's kind of fun to write characters like that. And most of them are based on people that I've known,
Who is
Not only, not in the legal profession, by the way.
right?
I usually use Army officers or athletes I played ball with or something as an example. Yeah.
Who is Punch based on?
Punch is, he's really more of a combination of people that I've known, more of a type, I think. Yeah, not any individual. Yeah.
So when you got into this, I mean, you had your wife kind of dared you, and so after you'd done your background stuff, you'd done your research, and you're ready to go. In the first 30 or 40 days, I mean, you'd start to get in your groove in it, but what surprised you about the process? What would surprise you?
Really, how very difficult it really is to write a novel. From the process standpoint, it's difficult. And half the time I can't remember what I had for breakfast, which is another reason I need an outline,
Well,
So,
that's probably
what
why
did
I need
say
one.
here, or did I already say that? But, it's just tremendously difficult to write a novel. It's a lot harder, I think, than you might think it was on the outside, as you know. And then how hard it can be to get something right. I think that I'm kind of perfectionist in some ways, and sometimes there's just something you want to say, and it's just not there. So the process for me was really eye-opening, and then the whole business of getting it published and all that was just what a challenge.
I've told friends that writing, when I'm in the middle of a book, I kind of get aggravated at myself because I'm like, I must be the slowest writer in the world. I swear I feel like that sometimes because I think that people think that when you're writing, you're kind of doing this, kind of rolling along. But when I write, it's more, that, I mean, because it, and I remember reading one time that Stephen King said, I write 20 pages before noon. And I'm like, I had never written 20 pages in a day. Good grief. Do you feel like you write fast? Do you feel, I mean, are you surprised at the speed that you write, or are you surprised that you write slower than you think you ought to?
I think it depends on what I'm writing. And sometimes I'll just, I type with two fingers. That's the other thing. I keyboard with two fingers, believe it or not. And sometimes I can get on a roll and I can write quite a bit. And for example, I flew back to Iowa City to see my oldest daughter over the 4th of July weekend. So as you might imagine, I spent quite a bit of time in an airport, and I had a yellow legal pad, and I wrote what turned out to be 5,500 words waiting on airplanes over the course of the weekend. And I know that because I came back and then I dictated it into the word processing program and did that. So sometimes I can get inspired and do pretty well, but and then sometimes, like anybody else, I struggle. I think, that outline helps me avoid the writer's block kind of thing, because I always know what I should be writing. But there are certain parts of books maybe that are drier or whatever, and I know I need to have a scene that covers this, that, or whatever, and it's like that file that's on the corner of your desk that you don't want to deal with, or
Right.
that client you don't want to meet with, or it's so some of those can be really slow to come together. But I try to write the book. I'm on contract for a book every 9 months. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm on contract for a book every 9 months. And I try to get the first draft done in 6 to 7 because I think I'm a compulsive reviser and reviewer. and that gives me some time to get it done to my standard before I deliver.
Right. I, here is just an observation that this is kind of a general observation I have about authors, but you fit into this category for me. I think that a good author can keep you interested in the book, can keep you interested in the story, can keep you rolling. But I think a great author can make you just as interested in the rabbit trails as in the main story. And your rabbit trails are awesome. I mean, these little bitty court cases that come up, or the little things that the detective punch is taking care of on the side while the main thing is going on. Your rabbit trails are just great. And so I really enjoy that. And I enjoy watching how you're crafting this by keeping those in there. And it's not just a charge straight through this one thing. And I'm as we're talking, I'm commenting on this because I really want people to get involved with your work. So I want people who, we have listeners or viewers or whatever you want to call it in 117 countries. And so I really want people to connect with your work. And I want to tell them why I'm such a fan, and I'm in 1 3/4 books, and I'm already such a fan. But I look at what you said a few minutes ago about the detail and getting it right. And that's one thing that I feel that fiction has to be more true than nonfiction. Fiction has to be more realistic than nonfiction, because if you're reading nonfiction and they're detailing something that happened, and they say, and so a chicken flew out of the concrete on the sidewalk. You're going, well, this is nonfiction. I guess that happened. There were witnesses. I guess that happened. But if you did something like that in a fiction book, people go, "This is stupid. That'd never happen." And so it has to ring true in a fiction book, which is why it gets me off track. I read a book not too long ago that the guy came out of the duck blind with his rifle, and I'm like, really, we aren't shooting rifles in a duck blind, but the author didn't know the difference, obviously, and he held the Glock on the suspect and made sure the safety was off. Well, there's no safety on a Glock, and so but things like that really hurt it. So where are you going from here? You've got 3 that are out, right?
Right. I have 3 that are out. I have Misjudged, One and Done, and False Evidence. And then right now, Capital Justice is my 4th one. And it is with the proofreaders going through that process. And when it finishes that, it'll go to the advanced readers, and it's set for launch on September 13th. Right. I'm contracted for 4, and we're in the process of negotiating an extension for a couple more. So I'm actually, in anticipation of that, I'm actually probably 30,000 words into number 5.
So when you did your first book, I mean, when you signed with your publisher, did they wait and see how your first book did and then sign you to a 4-book deal, or did you just sign a 4-book deal right after they read your book?
Yeah, I had written that as a one and done, really, that book, kind of a bucket list sort of, hey, showed you, Anne, kind of a thing, sure, that I could write a book. And I got, long story here, but I think it's kind of fun. I had been trying to get published, and I was up to about 100 rejections. And you know how hard that is, trying to tailor every submission. And I had quit. I had quit, and I went to a judicial conference in Jackson. And the main speaker there was a guy who's a wonderful man, and he's become a mentor of mine. His name is Martin Clark, and he's now retired, but he was a judge in Charlottesville, Virginia. And he was the guest speaker there, and he was speaking on publishing and lawyering and judging. And he said, hey, in every gang I talk to, there's a guy with a book. If you're a guy with a book and you're having troubles getting published, come see me. So I walked up after the thing, and he said, are you the guy? And I said, I'm the guy. And he said, so what are you doing? How many rejections you got? And I said, oh, hell, I don't know, maybe 75 or so. And he said, that's not enough. You got to keep your book out there. So I got back to Gillette here, and I told Ann, I said, well, I'm going to give it till the first of the year. And if I can't get published by the first of the year, then I'm done. I'll just say, hey, I wrote a book and good enough. And on December 12th, Severn River Publishing got a hold of me and said, we want to talk to you about a contract. I'm like, oh, contract? Publish my book, because I didn't know anything about this. And they said, we won't publish one, but you'll have to commit to 4.
Wow.
And I said to Ann, I said, oh, hell, I don't know if I can do that. And she said, hey, whatever you want to do. And so I said, well, this is going to kill, weekends and holidays for a while. Yeah, it hasn't been actually that bad as I thought it might be, but that's how it came about. So then I had a few months to revise Misjudged, which had been written as sort of a standalone, into kind of build the village and make it the lead of what would become the series. So
Right.
that's big.
See, I had in my first book, it was a standalone, and when it hit, I was like kind of like a rookie pitcher that had won 20 games. And so then they came and they signed me to a 3-book deal, but which I was real happy about until I sat down to start writing the first of the 3. And I was like, I don't even know how I wrote the first one. Now I'm really nervous. So that was odd. Yeah, there must be something in the water out in Wyoming, because you are now one of 3 people that I really like to read that do mysteries. That you don't know what's going on until the end. You don't find out. And one of them is Craig
Johnson.
Yeah. And
J. Box.
CJ Box. That's the other one.
Yeah, CJ Box. Kurt Wendelboe. There's another one. I just spoke with him. Was it earlier this month or last month? I can't remember. Down in Laramie County is another mystery writer from Wyoming. Yeah, there's more than you might think otherwise.
See, I wonder if now I can't believe I can't think. Craig's, what's his?
Longmire.
Longmire.
That's what he's best known for.
Right. And so I have wondered for a long time, because I read like 20 of his books, and I've read 20 CJ Box books about the game warden, and which I think that's great, because I've never read books about a game warden. I thought he got a great hero there that you just don't ever read anything about that. And that, what a great thing to mine. But I have wondered if CJ Box and Craig Johnson, I've wondered if they are like competitors or friends. And the reason, there's a real stupid reason for me wondering that, but it's very evident in the Longmire books, because it's mentioned quite often that when Longmire takes his hat off, he puts it like crown side down.
Right.
And the game warden, when he takes his hat off, it's crown side up. And those are mentioned in every book 4 or 5 times. And I've wondered, are these guys doing this to each other? No, this is the right way to do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't had the good fortune to meet either one of those guys. Wyoming is a small state, of course, so I know a lot of people who know one or the other or both, and hopefully someday I'll have the opportunity to meet one of those fellows.
Yeah, have you ever had any legal dealings with that area of Wyoming that's not covered by U.S. law or whatever that is? You know what I'm talking about, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, not directly. No, I have not. Um, that's Gillette is sort of barren, kind of between the Bighorn Mountains and the Black Hills, and I'm not sure anybody wanted it at the time. That was before they knew it had oil and gas and coal on it. So,
Right.
not near any of those areas in particular.
Wow. Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time. And I guess one last question that I know that a lot of people would want me to ask you, and that is, you had the experience of starting this career at a time in your life where you had actually gathered some wisdom. I mean, uh, a lot of writers started earlier in their life, and so what would you tell somebody? Because we both, I'm sure, run into a lot of people who want to write, who they want to write a book, and I always feel like they should. And I kind of tell people, because people say, well, I'm just waiting to be inspired. Well, I'm inspired like once when I think of the idea, and the rest of it's going to work. It's discipline. So, but what would you give me a couple of steps? What would you think? Great
Well,
advice.
I think the first thing that you said is exactly right. Write the book. Nothing's going to happen until you write the book. And I think there's so many of us, and you're an inspirational speaker and all that, and I appreciate what you've written on a number of topics. But we're all gonna do something. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. Until you write the book, you're never gonna know. And so I would say that would be the first step. And I think the second step is to write what you know about. And because of what you were talking about earlier, the accuracy thing, because those of us who know when the other guy doesn't know. And so I think if you write what you know about, then you're going to be more authentic. Your books, your characters, and everybody else will be more realistic. The settings will be better. So I think you can do that. I know my way around a courtroom, so I spend quite a bit of time in my books in a courtroom. I see other legal thrillers that I think are probably written by transactional lawyers that don't spend so much time in a courtroom, and that's fair and that's good, But write what you know, and for a couple of reasons. One, it'll be more realistic and authentic, and secondly, as you know, when the rejections come pouring in, you've got to believe in what you wrote. Otherwise, you're just simply you're gonna give up at some point, because that constant drumbeat of rejection, boy, that gets hard. But if you believe in what you wrote, and if you know what you wrote, I think you'll be more likely to stick with it until you bring that dream or the project to fruition.
That's awesome. That's great advice. People tell me sometimes, they say, well, I don't know how to write a book. And I'm like, yeah, neither did I until I wrote one. So
yeah, and my favorite is they ask me, how do I get published? And I'm like, well, hell, I'm like 1 for 150. Would you ask a batter who was 1 for 150 how to hit? I don't know, but I do know that you got to write the book.
Yeah, yeah. I love the stories of people that and when I would get down in the dumps about being rejected, I would go look at stories about books that I really liked and what they said to those authors and how many times those books got rejected. And that, so I know 150 times, that seems like a ton, but man, that is so encouraging to somebody. So we appreciate you being here, James. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Well, we'll have on the show notes how people can reach you and follow you. And I urge everybody to get Misjudged and get into this series. You're going to love it. James Chandler, thank you for being with us.
Thank you again. My pleasure.
I'm Andy Andrews, the professional noticer, harnessing common sense and wisdom to plow through challenges all the way to an answer for you. And I think that'll do it for this week. Get us out of here, Matthew. So, ladies and gentlemen, and to the boys and girls who aspire to become ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode of The Professional Noticer. In a world where common sense has become a superpower, I'm harnessing what tiny bit of mental energy I have for you, seeking wisdom, making observations, and endeavoring to answer tough questions in a way that will empower your family and your business. I'm Andy Andrews. Until next week, goodbye. This episode of The Professional Noticer was produced by Matt Limpert. The Noticer theme written and performed by Sugarcane Jane. Habeas corpus for the cast and crew has been guaranteed by contractual agreement with Twinkle and Smoke of Beverly Hills. Additional funding provided by funwithpoetry.com. Friend, is your only experience with poetry a negative one? Did someone force you to memorize the wreck of the Hesperus in the 8th grade? Did you fail English literature your senior year because you couldn't adequately explain the symbolism in Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner? Well, do we have good news for you? Funwithpoetry.com is a brand new app just made for the whole family. Mom, Dad, you can spend hilarious afternoons with your children and their friends by writing your own poetry using our automatic rhyme connector. Just type in the age and gender of your child, and rhyming matches for words they think are hilarious are at your fingertips. Watch this. By typing in 11-year-old boy, the words looker, cooker, and sugar pop up. The perfect sound companions to his favorite word, booger. You can also entertain your grandparents. Type in 84 years old, then male or female, and have words at your disposal like amends, dividends, and recommends. Perfect sentence finishes for a poem about depends. You'll also have access to our prepared parody section where famous poems are written out with a blank space between each line. Use that blank space to type in your own special version of the original. For instance, the classic poem Trees by Joyce Kilmer begins, I think that I shall never see a poem so lovely as a tree that may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair. This verse was parodized by 9-year-old Evans Bullard, who, between the lines of the original, penned these immortal words. I think that I shall never know a thing so lovely as my toe, a toe that may in summer wear scabs from stumps everywhere. So, surprise your dad, impress your mom, join now and have funwithpoetry.com.